Go.
Okay, today we're doing a Johnson F7B raw water pump here. We're going to rebuild this. First video is going to be on taking it apart. Second video is going to be putting it back together and making it functional. So before you get too far into taking one of these pumps apart, you want to take this, you want to look at the front of the housing, and usually there's a label on here that tells you what brand it is. In this case, this is a Johnson one, but a lot of these are similar. Johnson, Sherwood, all these guys are similar in the general way they're put together. But first thing to do is to unscrew with a big slotted screwdriver all of these screws. As far as getting parts, you're going to want to go on to the likes of pumpvendor.com or some site like that, where you can search the model number of the pump to find what parts you're going to need. The parts you might need to replace what's damaged or problematic. Generally speaking, you're going to replace the impeller and sometimes the seal, depending on the condition it's all in. And if you're having a leaking seal, like a leaking water seal or leaking oil seal, you're going to want to replace those. And you can find Pump Vendor is a good place to go for drawings. And if you don't like their prices, you can go on, once you've got the part numbers off a drawing, go on eBay or Amazon or whatever your choice is of a place to find the parts. As I regularly do. If I can't find a part one place, I'll go to another supplier. And sometimes it ends up being that I'm getting parts from 3 different suppliers to fix one pump. But as long as you can get it for a fairly reasonable price, that's not too big a deal. So now the lid's off. There's a little water in this, guys. So we're going to dump this in the, we're going to lose a little bit of this water. Now, we'll put in a vise. It's going to be handy to have a vise wherever you're doing this kind of work, just to give you a surface to work. Now you can use a couple of screwdrivers to wedge the impeller out. Even one screwdriver might get it. You also have a tool. This is the old seal. Discard that. You can discard that. You can always get most sets of impellers, even the ones off of eBay, have new seals in them. You generally don't want to reuse the seal. Now, if this is dry, you might want to get a puller like this to take it out. If you have a hard time with a screwdriver, this will also do it. But you don't have to have a puller. Now, so this guy here, the impeller, you can see how it's formed into a shape. It doesn't look terrible, but I probably would replace it just because if you're going to take this all apart, you're going to want to do that. Now, inside here, what you're going to see here is you've got the shaft, and you've got a wear plate down here inside. The shaft goes down out of the unit. So now, to take the shaft apart, you need a pair of snap ring pliers to undo this snap ring here and pull it out, which will allow everything to come out. There's a snap ring. So now that should all come straight out the back. Go back to the vise. Usually you want some kind of a device. I got pin punches here to use when you're taking this apart. You want to push it down and out through the seal. Just lightly tap it. Don't go too crazy on it. Whatever you do, try to avoid touching the shaft directly with the hammer, because you can peen it over, and that'll make it harder to reuse it, as in slide a new impeller into it. So here's the assembly here of the shaft and the bearing. You're going to want to play with the bearings and see if they have, how smooth they are. You always want to do this every time you take one of these apart. You grab a rag, wipe off some of this grease and crud, because on the one side, on the engine side, you're going to have engine oil, and on the other side, you're going to have water and or corrosion. These bearings don't sound too bad. They don't sound like there's any kind of scraping noises or resistance. Resistance. It'll sound like kind of like you're running along a bunch of rocks if it's really a bad bearing. If you have to swap bearings, you've got snap rings on either side, and you have to pull one that use an external snap ring puller to pull the snap rings, and then replace the bearings. That's a relatively straightforward thing to do. Now that we got this all apart, you can look down inside there. You see there's a U-cup seal in this style. Now this is one of the older pumps. The newer pumps use a modern ceramic mechanical seal, whereas this one just uses a U-cup. And then on the other side, you got the same story, another U-cup. You press these guys out. You're not going to reuse these, so it's not a huge issue as far as getting them out. You're going to probably damage them in the process. Now note that there's also an O-ring or a shaft spacer in between the two of these guys here, the two seals. So now let me grab a pair of needle nose pliers. I'll be right back. To get those two pull the seals out. Sometimes you can also use a pinpoint to drive them out too. That's sometimes what you have to do. It really varies. Let's see if I got it all. Nope. There goes the one. There's the one out of there. Now, looking at the wear plate, I'd say the wear plate is pretty much fine on this one, but you'll see sometimes that it gets worn out. Also, this top plate gets worn out occasionally. You're going to want, if you have to replace that, you have to replace it. But generally, those are the replaceable parts in here. Now, take out the other U-cup, and we should be able to start working on it. We should be able to go to the next video. Oh, by the way, so there's one of your spacers here, this piece of plastic. That has to be cleaned up and put back in, and you have to remember what orientation it was in. So it was the prongs faced outside, out of the water side of the pump. Keep track of that when you're putting it back together, because you're going to need to know which direction it faces. Also, note that there's still an O-ring in here. There was underneath that washer. And also note the orientation of the seal. So the U-cup seal, the lip faces down toward either side. So the lip faces down toward the oil side and faces up toward the water side. So basically that's how you're making your seal. There's that one out of there. And we'll see you on the next video putting this pump back together. Thank you.